Let's move on to news headlines. Speaking of things that need to be said, number one, Tucker Carlson, who I think is one of the most important voices in America right now, had an excellent monologue last night, and his message needs to be heard loud and clear, particularly by one person who hopefully was watching.
It would change the course of this country's future if the Justice Department rounded up the leaders of Antifa tomorrow, along with every single person caught on camera torching a building, destroying a monument, defacing a church, and put them all in shackles, and then frog marched them in front of cameras like MS-13 and called them what they actually are: domestic terrorists. Not protesters, not civil rights activists, not CNN contributors, but domestic terrorists. That would be their new government-approved title. Once they're charged, it's official, in fact. They are literally, as a factual matter, accused terrorists. And that would change minds right away. Most people don't like terrorists. Terrorists will never be popular, even among Democratic voters. So charge them for the crimes they've committed and call them what they are. Right now, the opposite is happening. The terrorists are more popular than the President of the United States. And not just more popular than Donald Trump personally, but more popular than the system he represents and administers. And it's obvious why. Our system is weak. It refuses to defend itself. Mayors let new countries sprout in the middle of their cities. Our leaders act like laws are irrelevant. Everyone watches this happen. It's a potentially fatal problem. Weak institutions die. Citizens develop contempt for them, and then they get overthrown. The same is true, by the way, for heads of state. When you refuse to fight for the system you run, you're done. Spend an hour on Google and see if you can find a single leader in the history of the world who stayed in power after failing to quell a rebellion. You can't.
By the way, that clip was shared by a Media Matters person, calling it maybe the most deranged rant I've heard on Fox News. Meanwhile, he said that was deranged. Meanwhile, all normal people think it's one of the sanest things we've ever heard, or at least recently heard. Tucker's exactly right. And if anyone needs to hear him loud and clear, it's primarily the president. Now, I know some of you don't like it when I criticize him. I know that. That's fine. You don't have to like it. But I'm telling you the fact of the matter. Tucker's saying the fact of the matter, like it or not. Trump is losing right now. I'm not just talking about the polls. The polls are one indicator. But it's not just about that. I don't even need to see the polls. I don't care what the polls say. Trump is losing right now. Make all the lame excuses you want. But if Trump continues tweeting while America burns, he will lose. More than that, he will deserve to lose. It's better for his supporters, I think, to face this fact now, put some pressure on him, than to whisper sweet nothings in his ear, telling him that the Law and Order tweets are great and totally sufficient. Everyone loves it. He's doing great. Nothing is wrong. They aren't sufficient. Everyone doesn't love it and shouldn't. Okay, the tweeting in general. I think most people, now I get it. Again, if you're a diehard, fan, then you're always going to love the tweets. But most people are not diehard fans and never were. Trump won 2016 with 70,000 votes. That gave him the Electoral College victory while losing the popular vote by 2 million votes. This is he won by a hair's breadth. So, I mean, his supporters have been lying to him, and he's been lying to himself since day one, saying that it was some sort of landslide victory. Not even close. This needs to be communicated to Trump in a hurry. Because right now, it's like the guy isn't even trying. He did a town hall on Fox last night. I don't know if you watched this thing. And he was asked what his plan is for a second term. Now, he's asked by Sean Hannity. You couldn't ask for a friendlier interviewer. And you couldn't ask for an easier question. What's your plan for the second term? You got to have an answer to that. That's you're a president. You're an incumbent president running for a second term. Somebody asks you, what's your plan for a second term? You should be boom, 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 have answers. This is what Trump said.
Let's talk about a second term. If you hear in 131 days from now, at some point in the night or early morning, we can now project Donald J. Trump has been reelected the 45th president of the United States. Let's talk. What's at stake in this election as you compare and contrast? And what are your top priority items for a second term?
Well, one of the things that will be really great, the word experience is still good. I always say talent is more important than experience. I've always said that. But the word experience is a very important word. It's in a very important meaning. I never did this before. I never slept over in Washington. I was in Washington, I think, 17 times. All of a sudden, I'm president of the United States. You know the story. I'm riding down Pennsylvania Avenue with our first lady, and I say, this is great. But I didn't know very many people in Washington. It wasn't my thing. I was from Manhattan, from New York. Now I know everybody. And I have great people in the administration. You make some mistakes, like, you know, an idiot like Bolton, all he wanted to do is drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to kill people.
That's just nonsense. That's bad. I don't want to hear, it's Trump being Trump. I don't give a damn if it's Trump being Trump. Trump needs to stop being Trump. That's babbling, ridiculous nonsense. You were asked a question. What's your plan? People actually want to hear it. It's a good question. That was not an answer. If the guy can't even tell us what he wants to do in his second term, why should anyone vote for him? He literally can't give you a reason to vote for him other than Joe Biden, blah, blah, blah. That's not going to be enough. It was enough against Hillary. Okay, to beat Hillary, all you had to do was say, look at Hillary, 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 Hillary. I think this time around, when you're in the incumbent and you have a record, for better or worse, you need to actually present a positive reason to vote for you. For you. What is good about you? Now, this excuse that people are providing for Trump, that his supporters are providing, Trump is doing nothing as anarchists destroy the country. The excuse is, well, we'll let the leftist cities destroy themselves. No. Yeah, that might seem like the sort of tough approach. It's not tough. It's weak and cowardly. It's the weakest BS I've ever heard. What you're saying is, let's give the criminals and anarchists everything they want. That'll show them. So what you're doing, if you let them destroy themselves, no, it's not them destroying themselves. It's allowing criminals and anarchists to do what they want while innocent Americans in those cities suffer. Trump is the president of those people. And it's not, and if your next move is to blame them for living in the city to begin with, that's not going to be a winning message. Well, they deserve it. They made a choice to live in a city because that's where they found a job. You might be able to soothe yourself with that message. That is not a winning message. Trump is the president of those people. He's their president too. You're not punishing the anarchists by letting them do what they want. Is this what people do with their kids? I guess, yeah, this explains a lot, really. This is how a lot of parents act with their kids. Well, I'll show them by letting them stay up all night playing PlayStation. They'll learn their lesson eventually. Yeah, maybe 30 years from now when they look back at their wasted childhood, that's when they'll learn their lesson. That's not good enough. No, they need to learn their lesson now. You're the parent. Do it. Now, I certainly hate to compare a politician to a parent because that's not the relationship a politician is supposed to have with the public, but still, these people are acting like children and worse. That's an insult to children. They're acting like worse than children, and they do need to be punished. Law and order, not just a tweet. He's floundering. It's pathetic. He's going to lose. That's the reality. If he doesn't do something now. Number two, they're coming for Mount Rushmore now. A report from the Daily Wire says on Thursday, USA Today quoted that a tribal leader of the Sioux Nation saying that although Mount Rushmore should not be blown up, it should be removed. How do you remove a mountain? I don't know. Oglala Sioux President Julian Bearrunner, who expressed his disapproval of President Trump's visit next week to the Black Hills, South Dakota, stated of Mount Rushmore, I don't believe it should be blown up because it would cause more damage to the land, but he agrees that it should be removed. And then there's a lot of stuff about how this is a symbol of Nick Tilson of the Oglala Lakota tribe said Mount Rushmore is a symbol of white supremacy, of structural racism that's still alive and well in society today. And on and on and on. And they'll do it. They'll do it too. They'll do anything they want. Okay? The people that are seeking to tear down the monuments and tear down Western civilization and all of its icons and heroes, they're just getting whatever they want. And that's how we're punishing them by just letting them do it. Great strategy. Wonderful. Number three, here's something to think about next time you're at the beach. Look at this drone footage of a great white shark, gigantic beast, swimming right under unsuspecting surfers. Good God Almighty. Now, you know, I like the beach. I love the water. But it is kind of a weird thing we do, isn't it? I always think if aliens were to come to this country, that'd be one of the many things they're very surprised and confused by. They would say, why are these humans gathered around and for no constructive reason swimming and paddling in this giant salty death trap where man-eating monsters are lurking in the depths? And a lot of them aren't even doing anything. And if you go to a beach, they're just standing in it, letting the ferocious waves pummel them in the face while they get sand up their shorts. And they do that for an hour and a half, and then they go home. What was the point of this ritual? That's what the aliens would be asking, I imagine. Of course, I'm also assuming that aliens don't know what an ocean is. I mean, if they didn't have an ocean on their home planet, then there would be no civilization to begin with. So, you know, there are problems with my hypothetical. But anyway, number 4. After 30 years, the Dixie Chicks are changing their name. They will now be the Chicks, not the Dixie Chicks. Why is the word Dixie offensive? This is very interesting in a lot of ways, and it shows, among other things, what I'm always talking about, how feminists are constantly having to take a back seat when it comes on the modern left. Feminists are very close to the bottom of the totem pole. They're almost, at this point, they're treated almost like white men to be a feminist. You're not that much higher, you know, on the hierarchy than white men are as feminists. Because all of their interests are thrown to the side. And you see here, so Dixie Chicks changing their name, and they're going to keep one of the words. They decide to keep chicks, which the feminists have been saying for decades is offensive. And now they're just the Chicks. We got to get rid of Dixie, but not chicks. I just think that's very emblematic of the situation on the modern left. And of course, meanwhile, you've been the Dixie Chicks for 30 years. You're just now deciding that it's offensive after 3 decades? What changed your mind? What made you realize that it's offensive? What were you told in the last year or few months, really, that you didn't know already that made you decide that it's offensive? Now, it's not offensive. The word Dixie is not at all offensive. But if you think that it is, what new information were you provided that brought you to this conclusion? Or have you thought that it was a racist name all along, and so you've just been white supremacists for 30 years? Which is it, Dixie Chicks? I didn't even know Dixie Chicks still existed, to be honest. I had no idea that they were still out there making music. All right, number 5, a report from Fox Carolina. Very sad, disturbing, infuriating story. The Forest City Police Department said a young girl has died after she was severely injured in a shooting on Tuesday evening. The shooting happened along the intersection of Oak Street and Harmon Street around 5 p.m. The officers arrived, found 2 individuals pulling a 7-year-old girl from a vehicle, and she was suffering a single gunshot wound to the head. Now, they arrested Shaquille Marshawn Francis, 26 years old, charging him with shooting this girl in the head. They haven't been, there's no information about motive or anything. Not that motive matters at all with a crime like this. But here's the thing. Francis, the monstrous scumbag, or alleged monstrous scumbag, was released from jail just a few hours before. One of the reports I read said that he was released from jail on different charges, other charges. I think it was assault by pointing a gun at someone. One report said 3 hours earlier he was released, and then allegedly immediately went and shot a girl in the head. This goes back to the drum I've been banging for weeks now, that if we're going to be doing reforms that protect Black lives and all lives, then rather than police reform being the first thing we do, we should be looking at reforms that would prevent murderous sociopaths from walking the streets. Because the current strategy is that criminals, dangerous criminals, get out of jail a million times until they do something so unbelievably heinous that there's no choice but to lock them away for, and even then, a lot of times it's not forever. It's for, but at least for many years. That's the strategy right now. I mean, you have someone who they've committed many crimes, many of them violent, and you know that eventually they're going to do something utterly horrible. But all we do is just wait for them to do that thing. And to that victim, even if it's a 7-year-old girl, apparently the system is saying, well, too bad, basically, is what the system is saying to these victims. I think this should be the reform. If you have someone, if this is the crime that he committed, assault with a deadly weapon before, what is he doing back out on the street? Keep him in jail. This is a dangerous person. Why are you letting him out? That should be our reform. Hey, you. You right there. Hit the subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It's somewhat appreciated.